production crazier would be if at one stage they hired, a Goonie to direct the movie. Oh, thank God that didn't happen, because that would have been weird.
Number 6. Then a Goonie was hired to direct Fantastic Four. So with the Fantastic Four production having more potential directors than I've had hot dinners, the production then looked to former Goonie and Sam from the Lord of the Rings trilogy, Sean Astin, to direct the film. Astin really wanted to direct Fantastic Four, as he wanted to extend his talents to film directing, and thought that if he directed a Fantastic Four movie, then that would give him some clout. You know, some street cred in Hollywood, so to speak. And it did seem that negotiations were going forward, however the studio were a bit dismayed by the fact that he hadn't directed a movie before, and so these plans didn't go through. Finally, Tim Story was hired as director, as the studio was impressed with his action comedy Taxi, which he also made for Fox. That, and he was a fan of Fantastic Four. So the production now had a director. But then there was the script, which was a whole different animal. Comic book writer Sam Hamm, who also worked on the script for the 1989 Batman, was hired to make rewrites to the script. But a few years later, Twin Peaks co-creator Mark Frost was then hired to also make rewrites. And he would be credited alongside Michael France, who was previously working on a script with Chris Columbus. But Wikipedia suggests that Simon Kinberg, who also wrote several X-Men movies, did some uncredited work on the script, as well as director Tim Story himself, on the account that Story saw the Pixar movie The Incredibles and thought that the movies were going to be too similar, and so changes would have to be made. It supposedly was also Story who wanted Fantastic Four to be a special effects heavy movie. Now granted, a lot of special effects would be needed. I mean, we're dealing with superheroes who can stretch and fly around in flames. But yeah, the movie is quite heavy on CGI and loud action set pieces. Probably more than your average superhero movie of that time. So do all the glossy effects make for a fun popcorn movie, or are they all just obnoxious eye candy? Well, that all depends on the beholder. Number 5. Casting possibilities. So with the production now on track, the task was now at hand to find actors to play the iconic parts of the Fantastic Four and their nemesis, Dr. Doom. When Chris Columbus was at the helm of the movie, he really wanted real-life married couple at that time, Dennis Quaid and Meg Ryan, to star as Reed Richards and Sue Storm. When Sean Astin was in negotiations to direct the movie, according to Wikipedia, he envisioned Christina Aguilera as Sue Storm. IMDb offers some other insights into who could have been cast in the Fantastic Four movie, including Paul Walker as Johnny Storm, but the part would be cast with Chris Evans. Now he seems familiar. Oh yeah, that's right, he's that guy from Not Another Teen movie. John C. Reilly and James Gandolfini were considered for Ben Grimm, aka The Thing, but the part went to Michael Chiklis. When it came to Reed Richards, aka Mr. Fantastic, actors being sought out were Hugh Jackman, George Clooney, Brandon Fraser, and Mads Mikkelsen auditioned, but the role went to Welsh actor Ewan Griffith. As for Sue Storm, some of the candidates include Charlize Theron, Kate Bosworth, Julia Stiles, Scarlett Johansson, but it was Jessica Alba who was cast, and I swear that at that time, many teenagers had a poster of her on their wall. And finally, when it comes to the movie's big bad, Dr. Doom, actors considered were Jude Law and Robert Downey Jr., but the part went to Australian actor Julian McMahon.
Incidentally, Julian McMahon is the son of former Australian Prime Minister William McMahon. What a twist, huh?
Number Fantastic Four. Filming fiasco. Despite being set in New York City, Fantastic Four was filmed in Canada, namely Vancouver, British Columbia. Sadly, during the shoot, Jessica Alba suffered a kidney infection, which got so bad during the filming of the scene at the space station, she nearly fainted. Michael Chiklis found it very uncomfortable wearing his Thing suit, which consisted of big, bulky, and no doubt very heavy prosthetic bodysuit. In fact, he would even have to wear big prosthetic teeth. Really, the only time the suit came in handy was when filming on the streets of Vancouver during the winter, in which the suit actually kept him warm. One day his wife turned up on the set to visit him, and she saw him in his Thing costume for the first time, completely unprepared, and was so shocked with what she saw, she completely freaked out and lost her composure, and needed assistance to be escorted off the set. Naturally, being Welsh, Ian Griffith would have to learn to speak with an American accent. But he really struggled with this, as the script would be constantly changing, to which he would constantly be having to learn new lines and thus try to incorporate these lines with his fake American accent, which apparently was easier said than done. For the scene where Steve Richards and Sue Storm were talking on the pier, the actors weren't even together to film this scene. Presumably, they were performing their lines with a stunt double, with the footage being edited together. That's why when we see a front view of Jessica Alba, her hair is blowing in the wind. And when we see the back of her hair is dead still. In fact, when Griffith shot his scenes for this interaction, he was filmed at Vancouver, and Alba shot her scenes in New York. Despite the fact they're meant to be talking to each other, they were in completely different cities. Ah, the magic of the movies. The one person who I think seems to be having the most fun in the movie is Chris Evans, who plays the part as a sort of obnoxious, loudmouth frat boy full of enthusiasm and a zest for life, who is equally charming as he is a smartass. He supposedly ad-libbed a huge chunk of his lines during the shoot. And one of the biggest action scenes in Fantastic Four is the scene where chaos erupts on the Brooklyn Bridge, of which took 5 months to shoot. And considering the movie was being filmed in Canada, a huge chunk of the bridge would actually have to be recreated.
Yep, it's an explosive scene where the Fantastic Four save the day from a disaster that they pretty much created. Yeah.